You remember the silence, don't you? It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that settled over your home the moment you dared to have a boundary. You sat there, heart hammering against your ribs, wondering how a simple no could transform a person you once loved into a cold, unrecognizable stranger. You weren't imagining that chilling shift in the atmosphere. Have you ever wondered why, even when you were sitting right next to them, you felt like you were being erased in real time? It was as if your presence was an inconvenience to their internal narrative. You kept shrinking yourself, thinking if you just became smaller, quieter, or more accommodating, the peace would finally return. But the peace you were chasing was never actually on the table. You were told you were too sensitive, too demanding, or perhaps just too difficult to handle. But deep down, there was a quiet, insistent voice in your gut that knew better. It told you that your reality was being bent and that your kindness was being mined for someone else's benefit. You ignored that voice for so long because you were trying to be the bigger person in a game with no rules. Think about the exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness that followed every conversation that went in circles. You left those moments feeling like you had run a marathon, while they walked away with a strange, recharged energy. They didn't just want your time or your affection, they were feeding on your confusion. You were the anchor, and they were trying to drag you into their stormy sea. Nobody talks about the loneliness of being with someone who should be your closest ally, yet feels like an adversary in disguise. It is a specific kind of agony, seeing the person you thought you knew stare right through you. You kept waiting for them to wake up, to see your pain, and to finally apologize for the wreckage. But the apology you waited for was a ghost in the hallway. It wasn't about love, though they used that word like a shield whenever you tried to hold them accountable. Love doesn't leave you feeling diminished, it expands you. What you were navigating was a systematic dismantling of your own identity. Every time you compromised your values to keep them happy, you lost a little piece of the person you used to be. You were grieving your own life. Remember the way they would flip the script? You would walk into a room with a valid concern, and somehow, minutes later, you were the one apologizing for something you didn't even do. You felt like you were living in a funhouse mirror maze, where every reflection was distorted and every exit was blocked. Your sanity was the collateral damage in their desperate need to be always right. There were moments of brilliance, weren't there? Brief flashes of the person you originally met, which kept you anchored to the hope that they would return. But those moments were just part of the trap, the dangling carrot that kept you running on their treadmill. You weren't loved for who you were. You were being maintained for what you provided to their fragile, starving ego. You kept trying to explain yourself, hoping that if you just used the right words, they would finally understand your heart. It was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No amount of effort, logic, or tears was ever going to be enough because they weren't interested in your truth. They were only interested in maintaining their control over your emotional landscape. But then, something changed. The cycle that felt infinite suddenly hit a wall, your wall. You stopped negotiating, stopped begging, and stopped explaining. You didn't do it with a shout, but with a quiet, terrifying certainty. That shift in you was the first time they realized, for just a fleeting second, that the game might actually be coming to an end. What most people never realize is that the narcissist doesn't actually see you as a person with needs, dreams, or boundaries. To them, you were an extension of their own ego, a utility designed to provide validation and stability. When you started pulling away, it wasn't just a breakup to them, it was a malfunction in their system that they felt entitled to fix by force. Here is what was really happening behind the scenes of those cold stares and sudden silent treatments. They were testing the perimeter of your resolve. Every time they pushed, they were checking to see if you would revert to the old version of yourself, the one who begged for closure and validation. You were a puzzle they thought they had solved years ago, and they were baffled. The psychological trap they built was designed to make you believe that you were the one losing your mind. They used your own empathy against you, knowing that your desire to be a good person would prevent you from seeing the malice in their actions. They needed you to stay in the fog because, outside of it, their behavior becomes impossible to justify or excuse. It's simple, really. They viewed your independence as a personal betrayal. To them, your success, your joy, and your peace of mind were resources they had a right to tap into. When you began to reclaim your own time and energy, they interpreted it as a theft. It's a twisted logic, but for them, your autonomy was a direct attack on their need for constant, unquestioned access to your internal world. This is where it gets disturbing. They actually began to believe their own lies. They constructed a narrative where they were the victim, and you were the villain, simply because you stopped playing your assigned part. They needed to believe you were the one who failed so they didn't have to face the void of their own character. They were painting over a cracked foundation with layers of blame. You weren't just a partner to them, you were a mirror. They stared into you to see a version of themselves they could tolerate. When you finally turned that mirror away, they were forced to confront their own emptiness, and they hated you for it. They didn't want you to be a separate, whole person. They wanted you to be an accessory that validated their version of reality. The confusion you felt was actually the most rational response to an irrational environment. You were a healthy person trying to navigate a landscape built on manipulation and gaslighting. The fact that you felt confused, hurt, and desperate meant your internal compass was working exactly as it should. You weren't failing, you were being systematically pushed into a psychological corner. And that's when the truth appears. Their rage wasn't about something you did wrong. It was about the fact that you did something right by prioritizing your own life. Their anger was a flare gun sent up because they felt their control slipping through their fingers. They couldn't handle the idea that you might actually be okay without them, because that proved they were never truly needed. They often rely on the fear of abandonment to keep you compliant, but they never expected you to be the one to initiate the departure. They were counting on you to stay, to fight, to justify, and to beg. By refusing to do those things, you broke the script they had been writing for you. You took the pen out of their hand, and for the first time, they were the ones in the dark. What you are witnessing now is the breakdown of their grand design. They are trying to find someone else to plug into the socket you left behind, someone who won't ask as many questions. But they are finding that the world is getting smaller for them. The masks are getting heavier, and the cost of keeping them on is becoming something they can no longer afford to pay. You thought they had forgotten you, that you were just another discarded toy in their wake. But the truth is much darker for them. They never stopped monitoring you, looking for the telltale signs that you were crumbling, waiting for the day you would crawl back to validate their dominance. They were waiting for a return that was never going to happen. You thought they won because they walked away with their ego intact, leaving you to pick up the pieces. But the plot twist is that while you were gathering your strength, they were losing their center. They were wandering through a series of hollow interactions, realizing that no one else provided the kind of authentic, deep emotional feedback you once did for them. You thought you were weak because you felt shattered, but you were actually undergoing a profound transformation. The very things you thought were signs of defeat, your tears, your isolation, your questioning, were the labor pains of a new version of yourself. You were surviving a dismantling, and in that process, you were unknowingly building a fortress that they could never penetrate. Imagine their shock when they realized the door wasn't just closed, it was replaced with a brick wall. They kept knocking, sending small signals, testing the waters, only to find nothing but silence. That silence wasn't your weakness. It was the most powerful weapon you could have used against them. It stripped them of their power, because they had no reflection to look at anymore. You thought they didn't care about your absence, but the truth is that your absence has become a permanent, gnawing itch they can't scratch. Every time they try to move forward, your memory haunts them not because of love, but because you represent the one time they lost. They cannot handle the narrative that they were rejected by the very person they tried to consume. They are stuck in a loop of trying to rewrite history, telling anyone who will listen that they were the one who walked away. But their lack of peace gives them away. They are trying to build a castle on shifting sand, and they know it. They are perpetually anxious, looking over their shoulder, terrified that you might finally expose them for exactly who they have always been. The twist isn't that you became a hero overnight, it's that you became impossible. You became the one thing they feared most, a person who no longer requires their permission to be happy. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't care about their opinion. They can't gaslight someone who trusts their own memory. You became a ghost they couldn't haunt anymore. They are watching you thrive from a distance, and it is a bitter pill for them to swallow. Every step you take toward your own freedom is a testament to their failure. They aren't watching you because they miss you, They are watching you to see if you have discovered the secret they never wanted you to know, that you were always the source of the light in that relationship. While they continue their hunt for someone else to drain, you have learned how to nourish yourself. You have learned that the peace you felt in the beginning of your recovery was the greatest indicator that you were on the right path. They thought they had broken your spirit, but they only succeeded in stripping away the parts of you that were never yours to begin with. So, when they see you now, they don't see the person they thought they owned. They see a stranger who looks familiar but carries an air of untouchability. The dynamic has shifted so completely that they don't even know how to approach you. You have effectively become a mirror that no longer shows them what they want to see, and that is a brutal, cold realization for them. Narcissism is a self-imposed prison. They spent years trying to isolate you, but in the end, they were the ones who became truly isolated. They are surrounded by people who perform for them, but they know, deep down, that none of those people actually care about them. They have traded genuine connection for the shallow, fleeting high of being the center of attention. The tragedy of their existence is that they can never truly be known. Even at their most vulnerable, they are performing. They are terrified that if someone were to see them as they truly are, flawed, scared, and empty, that they would be abandoned instantly. So they curate, they manipulate, and they lie, never realizing that the isolation they fear is the direct result of their actions. Watch how their relationships all tend to end the same way. It is a predictable cycle of intensity, followed by disappointment, followed by destruction. They cannot sustain intimacy because intimacy requires honesty, and they have no honesty to give. They are doomed to repeat the same patterns, seeking a fulfillment that their own personality structure makes impossible to achieve. They are learning a brutal lesson. Your absence is a void that no one else can fill. It's not that you were irreplaceable. It's that you were the last person who was willing to see the humanity they desperately tried to hide from themselves. Now they are left with echoes. They are left with the silence of rooms where no one truly knows them, and no one truly loves them. The distrust they sowed in you has now turned inward. They can never trust anyone else because they know, better than anyone, how easy it is to wear a mask. They project their own deceit onto everyone they meet, making it impossible for them to ever experience the safety of a real partnership. They live in a world where everyone is a potential threat or a potential pawn. There is a specific kind of loneliness that sets in once they realize the supply has dried up. It's not the lonely feeling of being alone. It's the lonely feeling of being in a room full of people and realizing that nobody actually sees them. They have become so good at playing a role that they have lost track of the actor. They are effectively strangers to themselves. They are losing their power because their power relied entirely on your participation. Without your reactions, your tears, or your attempts to fix them, they are just empty vessels shouting into a storm. They are becoming irrelevant in the only story that mattered, yours. They are learning that without a victim, the predator is just a creature wandering in the dark, looking for a way out. They will try to rewrite the past one last time, perhaps reaching out with a hollow apology or a sudden display of false care. But look closely at their eyes. You will see the same hunger, the same coldness, and the same lack of genuine remorse. They aren't looking for redemption. They are looking for a way to restart the engine of your misery so they can feel in control again. But you see it for what it is. You don't need revenge because you have been given the most profound gift of all, the truth. You don't have to wonder why they are the way they are, or if you were the problem. You can see the consequences written in the hollowness of their lives, in the burnt bridges, and in the cycle of people who eventually walk away from them, just like you did. They are learning that they cannot touch you anymore. Your energy is no longer theirs to consume, your thoughts are no longer theirs to dictate, and your future is no longer tied to their failures. They are trapped in the consequences of a life lived in service of a false self, while you are out here, breathing, growing, and realizing that the world is finally yours to explore again. You have walked through the fire, and instead of being burned away, you have been refined. The person you are today is not the same person who entered that relationship. You have developed a resilience that can only be forged in the furnace of profound betrayal. You have learned how to spot the shadows, how to listen to your intuition, and how to protect your own heart. Recovery is not about forgetting. It is about integrating the lesson into the fabric of your soul. You have gained a superpower that most people will never understand. The ability to recognize when your boundaries are being crossed before it becomes a catastrophe. You are now the guardian of your own peace, and no one has the keys to your internal kingdom but you. Breathe in the air of your own life. It tastes different now, doesn't it? It's cleaner, sharper, and entirely yours. Every decision you make, what to eat, where to go, who to talk to, is a radical act of self-ownership. You are finally building a life that doesn't require a constant state of crisis to function. You are finally allowed to be boring, to be happy, and to be yourself. You might still have bad days, moments where the old fears flicker like a dying candle. But notice how much faster they pass. You no longer mistake those feelings for reality. You know they are just echoes of the past trying to trick you into a state of panic. You look at those fears now, acknowledge them, and let them walk on by. You are no longer their captive. The most beautiful part of this journey is that you are falling in love with your own capacity to heal. You are realizing that you didn't need them to save you, you only needed yourself to stop running. You have become your own hero, the one who stepped out of the story they wrote for you and started writing a new one where you are the protagonist who walks away stronger. Your trust in yourself is the foundation of your new reality. When you say yes, you mean it. When you say no, you stand by it. There is no more second-guessing your own mind, no more debating your own reality. You have achieved a clarity of spirit that is impenetrable. You are no longer a target. You are a person who commands respect simply by existing. Look at your life and see the abundance that was there all along, hidden behind the fog of that relationship. Your friends, your interests, your dreams, they were waiting for you to come back to them. You are reconnecting with the world, and the world is welcoming you with open arms. You are finally free to become the person you were always meant to be before they got in the way. You don't need to wish them harm. Their existence is already the punishment they deserve. You have something they will never have, the ability to feel, to grow, and to connect deeply and authentically with others. You are rich in ways that they will never comprehend, because you know what it means to lose everything and find that you were still standing at the end of it all. Walk forward with the knowledge that you have broken the chain. There is a deep, quiet strength in knowing that you are finally untouchable. You are the architect of your own peace, the keeper of your own story, and the master of your own happiness. The past is a lesson, not a sentence, and you have graduated to a life of your own design, where you are the final authority. The greatest punishment for a narcissist is watching the person they tried to break finally become impossible to control.